What's up? How you guys doing today? I'm here to rank all the pay-per-views that happened in 2024. We had some great cards, some amazing cards, as you can see on the screen. But first of all, Happy New Year to all of you guys. But I'm gonna start off with UFC 302, and I'm gonna put this in the D tier, which is the wipe my ass tier. As you can see, listen, I know that Dustin Poirier had one of the coolest lockouts ever. But it doesn't change the fact that Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa, they had a really boring fight. And Sean Strickland was saying at the press conference, like, I'm gonna bleed for you guys. I'm gonna beat the shit out of Paulo Costa.
We're gonna bleed for you guys. I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna sacrifice some brain cells for you guys.
But ended up fucking teeping his way to victory. Bro, 95% of his fucking strikes were teeps to the body. No damage at all. He just probably wanted to keep his number one contender spot, keep that, number one next to his name. But besides those two fights, we had who? Alex Morono and Nico Price on the main fucking card. Two of the goofiest fighters, bro. We can't let the UFC put people like that on the main card. Listen, the first fight was Randy Brown and Alexi Dos Santos. If that's the first fight on the card, and that's the only one that's like, involves names that are not big and not known, and okay, one fight, only one, I can live with that. But then Alex Morono and Nico Price step into the situation. And also, listen, I know Kevin Holland and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. I don't have a problem with Kevin Holland. Mikhail Oleksiejczuk is kind of a question mark. But at the same time, at least they put on a viral moment, Mikhail dropped Kevin Holland. That was the first time that Kevin Holland ever got dropped, and Kevin Holland reversed the position and eventually submitted Mikhail. But it was kind of controversial because Mikhail didn't even tap, and the referee stepped into the situation. And also on the prelims, we got Mickey Gall and Bassett Hafiz. That was a good fight. But listen, bro, we gotta compare this card to all of these. So I can't just put this in the mid tier, because you will see that all the fight cards that I'm gonna put in the mid tier, those are gonna be way better than this. UFC 302, in my opinion, besides the main event, and besides maybe the Kevin Holland fight, there was no hype. Or I should say, there was no entertaining fights with big moments. Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa was hype, ended up being one of the most boring fights ever. The last 15 seconds were great, that's it. The next one, UFC 301, I'm gonna put this in the B tier. And this might be controversial. This is one of the most underrated cards in the whole year, because people say, bro, Steve Erceg was the main event, what the fuck, this is fucking, F tier. But in reality, this was actually, especially the main card, was great. We had a lot of finishes with some upsets. Anthony Smith submitted Vitor Petrino, and he was being like a plus fucking 400 underdog, and no one was expecting him to win. And also Kai Barrio brutalized Paul Craig on the main card also. And then we had, of course, Jose Aldo came back after 2 years and showed that he still got it. And then the main event, Steve Erceg showing the levels, because bro, Steve Erceg coming into this was ranked number 10. His best win was over Matt Schnell. No one was expecting this guy to arguably win against Pantoja, but it was very close. But then unfortunately, this guy got KO'd by Cocker Friends a few cards later. But we're gonna get into that, as you can see in UFC 305. But overall. And we also had Mauricio Ruffi's debut on the same card. I think the vibes were amazing for me in that night, so that also adds some extra points. This is a sleeper card. I'm definitely putting this in the B tier. I'm scared to put this in the A tier because at the same time we had fight cards like UFC 298, which is, I know that the vibes were amazing as UFC 301, but UFC 298 was stacked, and also UFC 300, cards like that. But the next one, I was just talking about this a moment ago. UFC 298, A tier, definitely. This is the I'm about to bust tier, and I don't think I gotta explain the meaning, but Volkanovski and Ilya Sporia. Listen, the main card, we had guys like Merab and Henry Cejudo, Ian Gary, Jeff Neal, Robert Whittaker, and Paulo Costa. They put on a war. And then, of course, Ilya Sporia fight with Volkanovski. And then also on the main card, we had Anthony Hernandez and Roman Kopylov, which is also, when it comes to the hardcore fans, they were hyping it up. And it was actually an entertaining fight. They had a finish, second round submission by Anthony Hernandez. That was like the dark horse matchup at middleweight at the time. I would say everyone agrees with this. This is not controversial at all. Everyone loved this card, and so has me. So this is definitely in my top 5 in this year. But next one, which is gonna be an absolute stinker, this is F tier. I'm sorry, this is watch golf in stat tier, because UFC 297 and with DDP and Sean Strickland, besides the main event, again, we had no fucking great fights. We had no entertaining moments. Maybe we had like 2. Maybe we had a few. Because Arnold Allen and Movsar Evloev was kind of a good fight. It was not great. But I know Dana White was fucking fuming in the press conference. But the reason why is because he was mad at Rocket Pennington and Mauro Bueno Silva.
Yeah, that place sucked the wind right out of that fight sucked the wind right out of the arena tonight. So it might bum him out, but he's got to deal with it. Yeah, that was the least fun fight anybody's ever seen. So
we gotta be real. The WMMA co-main event ruined this all. And also Neil Magny. And listen, I know he finished Mike Mallet and kind of fraud-checked him and got a win after being beat I don't know how many times. But before the finish, we didn't have a lot of entertaining moments we didn't have big shots landing, It was just Mike Mallet kind of taking down Ian Gary, and he tried to copy the Ian Gary performance, but he couldn't do it. He was definitely winning, but it wasn't entertaining. And this wasn't as entertaining as, let's say, Diego Lopez and Brian Ortega. That was way better than this. And also Chris Curtis and Marc-Andre Barrieu. Marc-Andre Barrieu, a guy that has 9 losses on his record with 16 wins, doesn't deserve to be on the main fucking card on the UFC pay-per-view. Maybe if it's a fight night, yeah. I don't care if it's in Canada. This is not a Christmas wish list. You gotta build a sport. You gotta involve more people into this. You gotta get more people into this. And if you're putting Marc-Andre Barrieu on the main card, I don't care if he's Canadian. This is a business. Who was on the prelims? Charles Jourdain and some other fucking Canadian woman? Like, come on. Sean Strickland and DDP was great. Controversial decision. I thought DDP won. I didn't think that it was a robbery. I know it was very, very close, second round especially, but press conference was great, but that was because of Sean Strickland. But the card itself, in my opinion, it was shitty. But the next one, which is the opposite of shitty, is UFC 299. It definitely A tier. Bro, I enjoy this a lot because, again, the main card was stacked. O'Malley and Cheeto, the rematch. DP and BSD, or I should say Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint-Denis or Benoit Stavdini. Because people forget, Benoit Saint Denis was, bro, going into this fight with having staph infection, and because all the antibiotics that guy was taking, his cardio was ruined, and after the first round, he looked like a dead man, and we knew that. Listen, DP, he's dangerous. We know that, and in the first round, Benoit was dominating him. DP was just fucking pulling the guillotines, but he couldn't get anything done with them. It was just basically Benoit trying to choke him out during the whole round, right? So I believe if Benoit didn't have staph, maybe we would have gotten a better fight. And also Peter Yan, Song Yudong, very competitive. Peter Yan almost lost. If he doesn't land the takedowns, he would have lost, in my opinion. Maybe not, but he really needed those takedowns at the end of the fight. Also on the main card, fucking MVP's debut was amazing. I would have been more happy if he finished Kevin Holland, but no one does that. So at least he dominated him. Showed that he's not just a fucking crank crusher that everyone was saying. And also Curtis Blades and Jason Almeida on the prelims. I mean, if that's on the prelims, then you already know that card must be amazing, right? The vibes were amazing also. Even ordered a fucking poster of this. I ordered the poster of UFC 299 and I got this in my room, right? But listen, UFC 300 A tier. Definitely. This might be the best, but we're gonna decide in the end. UFC 300. I don't even want to name all the fighters on the card. Just a bunch of former champions. This is probably the most stacked card of all time, I would say. Maybe you can say that the WMMA fights, we had 3 of them, kind of, I don't want to say ruined it because it was still amazing in the end. They took some points off, right? This is a 10 out of 10, but without the WMA fights, this could have been a 12 out of 10. And that's what I'm saying. We didn't need fucking Marina Rodriguez and Jessica Andrade after seeing Davison Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt, because your adrenaline drops off, right? Because no one cares about WMA. But let's just put those in a trash can, right? And let's talk about the fights that we had on the card that were amazing. Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, Alex Pereira, Jamal Hill. Listen, I don't think I need to explain UFC 300 and the reason why it's up there. It's supposed to be the best card of all time, or the most stacked card of all time. Next one is gonna be UFC 303. I'm gonna put this in the better than average tier, in the B tier. But UFC 301 was better than this, in my opinion. I know we had fucking Peyton Talbot KOing some random ass dude, and also Gene Silva KOing Charles Jordan, and then Joe Pyfer. Dude, Joe Pyfer got a fucking faceplant KO against Marc-Andre Barrieu. And this time, this is not Chris Curtis and Marc-Andre Barrieu. This is Joe Pyfer, the saltiest man alive, versus Marc-Andre Barrieu. The UFC knew that, Mark was gonna get KO'd anyway, so because the original card, they had Marc-Andre Barrieu in the main card. I don't care, because Joe Pyfer got the finish. He would have got the finish anyways. Listen, we all love Joe Pyfer, and also the main card was kind of, I don't want to say mid, but I expected it to be better, right? Because originally it was Conor and Chandler, and it was Jamal Hill and Khalil Roundtree. Instead of that, we got Anthony Smith and Roman Dolidze, and that fight wasn't even that good. It was Roman Dolidze taking down Anthony Smith. Bro, he didn't even try to get up onto his feet, and when he was on his feet, he was just fucking trying to land some jabs and some fucking low kicks, some leg kicks. That was it. Bro, Anthony Smith looked like he looked like an old 4-year-old just grandpa out there. He looked trash, and everyone thought he looked trash. So that fight wasn't even that great. I was kind of upset because even though I'm trashing Anthony Smith, I still love the guy because he's so delusional that it's actually funny, and we love to keep him around. And we also had Ian Gary and MVP, which is kind of hype, but I know MVP embarrassed Ian Gary, but on the feet, Ian Gary, it was kind of a boring fight because Ian Gary was just laying on MVP's back, and maybe it wasn't like a very boring fight because I was worried that Ian Gary is gonna submit MVP all the time, but in the second round, bro, MVP outclassed him on the feet, showing the levels and showing that Ian Gary is overrated on the feet at least. I think he's not dangerous on the feet. I think he's not a top striker at welterweight. Overrated, fuck Ian Gary. We also had a random WMA fight on the card also. And the co-main event was Diego Lopez and Danny Gay. Danny Gay stepped in on 2 hours notice. Badass. And he also stole 1 round off of Diego Lopez. So props to him. It was a great fight also, but this does not deserve to be up there with UFC 300 and UFC 298. If this was Conor and Chandler and Hill and Roundtree, then maybe, just maybe, not just maybe, I would have probably put this in the A tier if it was Conor, but it was Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka, and yeah, it was a big moment. Alex KO'd Yuri, but it wasn't a war. It was Alex Pereira kind of shutting down Yuri. Yuri showed up with the worst defense ever. And after seeing the first round, we kind of knew that what was going to happen. But the next one, UFC 304. Fuck, bro. I know we had some big names on this card, but I'm sorry. This is the top of the mid tier. And I know it sounds weird calling this like a mid card, but I just can't help myself. Like the Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad fight, I literally fell asleep watching it, and it was in the afternoon. It wasn't because my body fell apart. It was because the fight was so boring. I know Tom Aspinall had a KO. It was like very expected. And also fucking Giga Chikadze and Arnold Allen had somewhat of a good fight. But then, Muhammad Makayev and Manel Kape, pretty boring. Supposed to be amazing, but then... Bro, even Muhammad Makayev got cut after the fight. We also had... Bro, this was on the main card. We had Christian Leroy Duncan and Gregory Rodriguez. Christian Leroy Duncan was embarrassing. He was hugging Gregory Rodriguez all the time. But bro, we have to put him on the main card because he's British, he's English, bro. And this is in the UK. You gotta understand, man. But bro, even the UK fans, they didn't even cheer for the guy. No one fucking cares about Christian Leroy Duncan. But I remember when in March the fights got announced, I was so hyped, bro. I was like, this is one of the best cards in the year. But then it turned out to be pretty mid. I'm sorry. In my opinion, this is in the C tier. Next one, UFC 305, A tier definitely. one of the best cards in the year. Fucking Kaikar France KOing Steve Erstag. No one expected that. Dricus Duplessis, after the press conference, making Izzy cry. He beat him, even though Izzy was kind of winning. Not kind of, he was definitely winning, bro. I remember in the third round, even in the fourth round, before the finish, I was thinking like, yeah, bro, Izzy's got this. Is he gonna win by a decision probably? But then Dricus somehow pulled it off. The early rounds were competitive, but then Izzy started taking over until the finish. The judges were out of their fucking mind in this card. One of them scored the Taito Iwasa and Jairzinho Rosenstrike fight to Taito Iwasa. What the fuck? Bro, Jairzinho Rosenstrike landed like 80 strikes and Tai landed like 20. It's just fucking embarrassing. I know Tai's in his hometown. Insane decision. We also had Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot, which was a scrap. And if I was a judge, without bias, you gotta think about this. Without bias, I would have gave it to Mateusz Gamrot. But this was in Australia, and Dan Hooker has way more hype than Mateusz Gamrot. So I love him in the top 5 and in the top 6. I speak for everyone here. Dan Hooker is way more entertaining than fucking Mateusz Gamrot with his smart style. And we also had the start of Carlos Prates' hype train. He KO'd Li Jingliang. This was when I started seeing the first Carlos Prates TikTok edits on my For You page. And on the prelims, I didn't really care about the prelims. We probably had fucking Jack Jenkins or someone like that. Next one, UFC 306. Fuck. I'm gonna say bottom C tier. Because even though the co-main event was, bro, it was absolutely trash. Main event was hype, even though the fight was kind of, mid because of Mirab. But we had Diego Lopez, Brian Ortega, which was kind of sick. It was just a beatdown. Brian Ortega showing up looking like my dad with his big belly. We also had Ronaldo Rodriguez, Ode Osborne. Nonsense fight. This guy was talking like he's like the next biggest deal in the flyweight division. But then he barely beat Ode Osborne. Like, come on, you don't have any hype. Stop saying the N-word. Just because you're Mexican, you can't say the N-word. Next up, we got UFC 307 with Alex Pereira and Khalil Roundtree. I put this in the D tier, in the Wipe My Ass tier, because even though we had Alex Pereira and Jose Aldo, and the main event was crazy, and also Jose Aldo got robbed, so we were emotionally invested. But listen, we had 2 WMMA fights on the main card, and I don't care about Kayla Harrison, bro. Kayla Harrison, so fucking hype. No, she's not. She had a competitive fight with Caitlin Vieira, and I understand that she's top 3, but come on. I think this is better than UFC 302, because even though UFC 302 didn't have as many WMA fights as this, but I feel like the quality of the fights on this main card especially were better. And also the prelims on this, we had Austin Hubbard, some guys like that, but I just can't put this in the same tier as Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades and Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad, UFC 304. I think this is the top of the D tier, UFC 307. And I don't care if the main event was entertaining, because in all of these cards we have at least one fight that's like very entertaining. and it involves two bigger names. The only one that's kind of different is UFC 306 because we had Esteban Ribovic and Daniel Huber, and they had the fight of the night. But at least we had, Brian Ortega, Diego Lopez, so that kind of makes a balance, I would say. But then, next one, UFC 308. This is definitely going to the A tier. One of my favorites. No WMA fights, stacked. A lot of finishes, a lot of entertaining fights. And the main event again was crazy. Even the co-main event, Khamzat Chimaev. Listen, a lot of viral moments, a lot of big moments. Khamzat Chimaev revived his hype train. Ilya Sporia, Max Holloway. That was crazy. Two of the best strikers on earth going at it. Amazing main event. Co-main and the feature fight was Magomed Ankalaev and Alexander Rakic. Number one contender fight, I guess. Leroy Murphy, Danny Gay. Not a lot of hype, but the fight was okay, I would say. So this is top 3, I would say. This is top 3 in my book. Next one, UFC 309. Fuck. This is hard. I'm gonna put this. You know what? In the low mid tier, low C tier. And I know you might say, "Well, we had Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. What the fuck?" The fight wasn't even that good. Up until the 5th round, it was just Charles taking Chandler's back and trying to submit him, but he couldn't do it. It was just him kind of dominating Chandler. Chandler had nothing for him. He was literally running away from the guy. The 5th round was pretty good. Chandler had some big moments. He almost finished Charles. Besides that, I expected more from the co-main event. Main event is, I wouldn't say it was hype, but the finish was impressive from John Jones, and he said that he's not going to retire. We also had Mauricio Rufy, James Lantop. That was a pretty good fight in my opinion. And then Bo Nickel, Paul Craig, that kind of ruined the whole thing. It was Bo Nickel, Bot Nickel went out there and fucking basically put on a cardio kickboxing class with Paul Craig, which is embarrassing, including that Paul Craig is a bum on the feet. I think I'm a better striker than Paul Craig, honestly. The guy has one weapon, and that's his body kick. Maybe if he hits me with one, then maybe I could fade, but if I can block those with my elbows and arms, or just move away from it, I could beat up Paul Craig easily because he's shit on the feet. He's slow as an old man, has no striking, never throws any punches. But the final one, UFC 310, definitely A tier. Bro, as you can see, a lot of A tier cards in this year. Like, we had one shitty card, one poopy card. I mean, we also had 2 because Islam and Dustin. UFC 302 wasn't even that good. But at least, look, we have 3 cards that are kind of shitty, but then we have 2 times and 3 times more in the good tiers, right? But now, let me talk about UFC 310. Bro, it was one of the most stacked cards of the year. I would say probably like on paper, on Anthony Smith papers, besides UFC 300, this was the most stacked card in 2024. I know we had Ilya and Max, but Ibo Aslan is a smaller name than Vicente Luque. Even a Temba Gorimbo at this point. Temba Gorimbo has a way bigger name than he had before he got the house from The Rock, right? We had Michael Chiesa, we had fucking Max Griffin on the prelims, Max Griffin. We had Chase Hooper, Clay Guida, we had Anthony Smith, Dominic Reyes, fucking Dooho Choi masterclass of Nate Landwehr, Kron Gracie. I would say the prelims were definitely more entertaining than the main card, because on the main card we had Ian Gary Shafkat, which was pretty boring fight, and then Kron Gracie Bryce Mitchell. I know it was a big moment when Bryce KO'd him, but before the finish, it was just fucking Kron Gracie with his embarrassing fight style, just pulling guard. He would just stick onto, literally, he's stuck onto Bryce Mitchell like a piece of gum, and he pulled guard, and then he did nothing with it. He had one submission attempt, only one. This is okay. I would say UFC 302 is better than UFC 297. UFC 300 is the best. Second one, fuck, I would say UFC 308. And then UFC 299, UFC 305. You know what? Like, for me, maybe like this. Yeah. And the other tiers, I don't really care. UFC 307 is okay there. I know it's hard to believe that I think UFC 307 is better than UFC 306. I don't care if that was in the sphere. Like, you know what? I'm gonna put this in the mid tier also. So we have UFC 309 in the wipe my ass tier, or I don't know which tier this was supposed to be. Hope you guys enjoyed. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I see you guys in the next one. So goodbye.